Hello, I'm Wava Carpenter of Design Miami. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with three rising star designer makers, Darren Appiagyei, Laura Sattin, and Diego Faivre. Darren, Laura, and Diego work in different media and create very different objects. But like many who produce objects by hand, their work has been informed by aspects of their personal experiences. As such, narratives of time, place, and identity become lenses through which to view and relate to their work. Okay, so let's dive in. We'll begin with each giving us an overview of their practices so that we can then talk about what they share in common and how they differ. So hi, Darren. Thank you so much for being here with us. Let's start with you.
Thank you, Wava. So I am a woodturner based in London. So I'm just going to show you my slideshow of my work. Yep, so my work is about embracing the intrinsic beauty of the wood, so allowing it to shine instead of trying to refine it or polish it into something that it isn't. So for me, it's key when I'm working with the material on a lathe, it's key for me to honor the wood, to allow its beauty to shine. My design is dictated by the different grains and the textures of the material. So I'm represented by the J. Luhrmann Gallery, who are based in New York. They mainly focus on ceramics and glass, but they've recently branched out into botanical craft, and that's why I come in. So I just want to say thank you to J. Luhrmann Gallery for this opportunity. So this is my signature piece. It's the Banksia nut. So it's a wildflower from Australia. It was discovered by Joseph Banks, who was a botanist and part of Captain Cook's crew. So when I work with the material, I aim to embrace each layer of the material. So it has three different layers. The first layer has more of like a crispy texture. The second layer has more of like a velvet felt feel to it. And then the third layer has more of like a wooden texture. So when I work with the material, it's about embracing all these natural layers and enhancing that beauty of the material. This is another piece of my work, another example of my work. So for me, it's just about working with a variety of different woods rather than focusing on one particular type of wood, as I believe there's a variety of different woods out there. So this is a technique called pyrographics. So it's literally, I burn. It's kind of like pointillism. I burn each piece of the wood, so dot by dot. So I do that to enhance and also to embrace the different tones of the woods. This is my baby. This is my lathe. This is where the magic happens. It's very much a therapeutic process for me. It's organic, as I've mentioned already. And I came to do woodturning just by chance. So I was studying 3D design at uni, and the lathe was free. The goal was to get my work done as quickly as possible to pursue my other passion, which was table tennis. But in the process, I fell in love with woodturning. And I just loved working with woods and exploring the raw natures of the material. This is something that I saw growing up as a child, coming from a Ghanaian background. So it just it was very therapeutic I find it very therapeutic when I turn on a lathe, and it's an organic process. So this is me. I get the majority of my woods from a farm in London, and it's almost like a treasure hunt. I go there and I just rummage through, and whatever catches my attention or whatever speaks to me, I literally pick it up and I take it with me. I give them a donation to the farm as we have a good rapport. And it's just a magical moment. It's from the beginning. It's not just about making, but it's about understanding the wood, making sure that the woods I'm getting have been naturally fallen. So by fallen, I mean that they haven't been forced. It hasn't been forced. Like it hasn't been cut down deliberately for me to carve into, but it's fallen naturally, if that makes sense. So with my work, it's all about an experience. For me, it's about telling a story, not just having a product, but actually kind of embracing the surroundings that you could find, you know, where you could find the material from, which is key. Because I definitely feel like we live in the Amazon era where we just kind of, we buy something online and we expect it straight away. But I want to educate people to show that it's a process we're making. So this is just more pictures. So I have 5 principles that I kind of abide to when I make. So the first one is to embrace the wood, to showcase its qualities, to explore a variety of woods. I definitely feel like we limit ourselves with the woods that we actually use, and ethically source the woods and make sure I use every piece of the wood down to the sawdust. So I try to put that in my packaging. I try and tell a story. It's all about a process. Educate others on wood. And simply, I've kind of repeated myself already, but it's so important to me, which is just to allow the wood to shine, which is the key. For me, it's not me designing it, but it's like a collaboration between me and the material, which is so important to me. Again, I'm always looking at how I can kind of present my work and the different environments. And I feel like as a maker, that is so important. And so I'm constantly trying to change it and understand how my work sits with other objects as well. And this is, it was part of Rake's Progress magazine, and it was based on a Renaissance era. And again, I just loved how they kind of knitted everything together like a composition. And for me, that's so important. It's not just about having that white background, but it's an experience. And also it makes people even more intrigued, want to know what is this object. And so I love opportunities when I can do that and showcase that in my work. Thank you so much for listening to me. If you're trying to find me on Instagram, you can find me on In The Grain with 2 N's. And thank you again, J. Lohman Gallery, for this opportunity, and Design Miami Basel. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful presentation. Let's move on to Diego then.
So I'm Diego Faivre. I'm a French designer based in the Netherlands, and I'm gonna present you the main project that I'm constantly working on, which is called Minute Manufacturing. And it's actually a project that is based since I'm a child, basically. So basically it comes down to my parents. So my mom would spend a few hours making a pie, and it would be a good pie because she would spend a lot of time working on it. And then my dad would like it and just try to reproduce the same recipe, but as fast as he could. And then he would present to us a pie made in 25 minutes, but it would not taste as good as the one of my mom, but it's still something that happens still today. So it's something that I've grown around. So I think there is an imprint of that in my work. And then a little bit later, I worked in a metal working factory for about 9 months. And over there, I discovered that the whole production was very calculated. So every action that I had to do was calculated toward a certain time. And that I had to produce things within this time. And if I would not, the manager would come and not be very happy. So within all this background inside of me, later on, I wanted to quit smoking. So I decided to take the breaks, the 15 minutes break that we had at school to make furnitures. So this is one of my 15-minute chair. So I was only taking things from the trash. So this is probably some trash bags and plastic foil around. So I was doing all these kind of playful objects, but they were all not very good looking. And so later on, I went to do a residency in China, and I found these packs of colored dough, and I, for some reason, put them on a chair that was in the studio, and there it was. So I thought, why don't I combine the minute aspect of the production, but also the Play-Doh aesthetic? So then I came up with the Diego coin, or the minute manufacture, where I would produce objects for €1 per minute. So this was my Diego coin manufacturing system. And so from then on, I worked on my graduation projects, mostly from it was only trash that I could find within the school or on the street. So that was my first kind of collection of objects from the resources that I had around me. But of course, it evolved over time. I also started to cover ugly objects that I could find around me. So I did a lot of extension cords because they're the ugliest objects that we have, and everybody has one. So naturally, I started covering a lot of extension cords. But also, after that, I was really intrigued into covering a lot of small, weird objects. So these are disco lights. I also did Tabasco bottles, a lot of different small objects. But I also covered a staircase in Vienna as part of the Vienna Design Week. So I spent around 10 days covering each rod of this staircase, which was fun. But then I had to take it down, which was not that much fun. But then I also did commissions where I was asked to make some buildings and to also give from my experience in Vienna, also how to translate that into smaller objects and also play with the colors and the patterns, which is something that I really love. And then also doing some pop-up manufacturing events where I would just come to some places. This is at the Ace Hotel in London. But I also did it in a lot of occasions where I would just cover things and some visitors would give me their object and I would cover them within a certain amount of time. And then I found by accident like some very thick construction styrofoam, and then I started something that I didn't do for a very long time, which was shaping and also play with the forms. And so that was and it still is kind of a big focus on that I have, which is to shape objects from the ground up, which I have a lot of fun of because it allows me to not think in terms of colors, but also in terms of how the color and the shape work together. I also, did a lot of various objects, including this is the jungle shelf. Yes, so that's it. Thank you.
That was so fun. Thank you, Diego. All right, Laura, it's your turn.
So I'm Laura. I'm an Italian architect. I'm based in Basel, so in Switzerland. And today I'm speaking with you about my project with glass. So as you read in my first sentence, my relationship with glass is very personal, spontaneous, sometimes unconscious, sometimes conflictual, slow but constant and deep relationship. So now I will explain you why it has all these kind of characteristics. So it started pretty early. When in this picture, I'm maybe 2 years old, but actually this is to tell that I have a kind of a familiar background with glass. This is the shop of my grandparents back in the 40s. So my grandfather opened the shop in Vicenza, my hometown, where he would sell some lamps and lighting fixtures, and within these also Murano chandeliers. And this shop is still existing. Now it's run by my mother and my aunt. And with time, it went more into the direction, less in the direction of electric stuff and more into the direction of artistic objects and handmade objects, basically mainly from Murano. So since I'm little, I was running around this shop and surrounded by glass. So for me, it was something really familiar. Also, traveling to Venice and going to Murano and visiting the glassworking studios was something that I used to do since I'm maybe five years old, and together with my mother, accompanying her. So for me, also going to see the masters was something that always fascinated me. Then while I was studying architecture, I decided to join a competition. Actually, I was working on my diploma. I was quite tired of, it was a theoretical research. And I think I was missing to like do something more creative, and I thought, okay, let's do a competition about. I found this competition about which they were. It was promoted by Murano Glass Museum and some other foundations, and basically they were asking to design a glass. And instead of designing one glass, I decided to design a set of glasses, because anyways, the theme they were proposing was to dedicate like a home, like to a tribute to the Venetian lagoon and to the landscape. So I thought, okay, I design a set of glasses and I play with the colors of the lagoon and the sky and the heights of the tires. And that's how this first design, which is, if I look back now, I see it's very figurative, but it was my first design in glass. And when I won this competition, this kind of gave me the incipit. So this was the start that I really like. From this, I continued then to design some glassware. And at the beginning, I started with some smaller pieces, so mainly glasses and tumblers and jars, carafes. And there was always this relation to the landscape and the surrounding context. So as you see in the left, this collection is named Briccole, and briccole are these wooden sticks that are in the lagoon and that mark the routes. And here I was using a technique which is using these canne, which are these kind of glass sticks, just at the bottom of the glass to recreate this kind of pattern that the briccole creates in the lagoon. And on the right, this collection is named Caigo. Caigo, it's a word in Venetian dialect, and it means fog. So as you see, it's like and also with this play of the lower cap and the taller glass, it's like the fog on the water. It's very typical kind of landscape that you have in winter in the lagoon. With time, I started to kind of detach a bit more from the landscape, simply like in this, the landscape always stays as an inspiration. The place is always something that inspires me, but I also, nature in general, but obviously I also focus on technique. So with each collection, I try to kind of deepen my understanding and also experiment and try to work with a specific technique. And when I started working in Murano, if you think why you go to Murano, glassmaking is something that now it happens all over the world. And so of course I'm from there. So that was like my natural and spontaneous way of working. And I knew already the glass masters who were collaborating with my family. But I also thought, okay, I have to profit of this kind of heritage and knowledge, because in Murano they're used to work with glass since centuries, and there are some really old and traditional techniques which are not so common anymore, because they're used in very kind of classical and traditional designs. So I try to rework with this technique and apply them in like more in simpler shapes and more contemporary aesthetics. So as you see in the left, this collection is called Brina, which means frost. And maybe you don't see very well in this picture, but there is a bottom part, which is a kind of smoky amber glass, and the upper part is a filigree pattern. So it's a white filigree. And on the right, this collection is named Pollen, and this is using gold leaf, blown gold leaf. So basically, the glass master with the pipe will pull, and with the hot glass will pull up some gold leaves, and then when he blows, the gold like spreads and becomes like a thin dust, which reminds of pollen on the surface of the glass. So this is one of the glass blowing studio I work in Murano, and for each collection, actually, I go to different studios, because each master normally is specialized in working in some with some techniques. So if I work with the gold leaf, with the blown gold, I work with a specific master. And if I do filigrana, I work with another master. So it's always a very personal dialogue, and it's like a personal relationship with one craftsman. And each collection has obviously a strong imprint from the craftsman. I really developed them together with them. Then when it was 2016, I moved to Switzerland because of my career as an architect. And at the beginning, I thought I would stop making glass. I was kind of ready to stop because I didn't think I could continue somewhere else. I was used to work with certain people. But then actually, it naturally went on. I mean, just by chance, the wife of my former boss, she had a gallery. She thought she could exhibit my pieces, and then I said, okay, maybe I produce some more. And then I met these two young glass blowers, which just opened their studio nearby the Lake of Thun in Interlaken. So these are Max and Jan, and I work a lot together with them right now. And the collaboration is very different as from Murano, because with them I think there is less of a weight of like the traditions and this heritage that you feel in Murano, and it's really like strong. And in Murano there is also like a attitude which is more like really sticking to kind of the traditional way of working. And with them, I like to experiment a lot with. So here in Switzerland, I will show you now my collections that I developed here. You see, like some people tell me they are a different style. For me, it's not a question of style. It's more like I'm working with different people, and of course, I see different potentials. And so for me, it's always a matter of the collaboration and understanding like what's the potential of the people and what we can do together. So here in Switzerland, the way they work with glass is different in the sense they have like this, the color is not like in Murano that they really melt the sand and the minerals together and they melt like 50 kilos of one color. Here we have the possibility to play with like smaller amounts of color and have a wide selection. So of course I was intrigued by this and I started to work a lot more with color here in Switzerland. So you see like this vase on the left, which they're called accordi from the theory of color, like a chromatic chord is like the study of the way of combining colors. So this is one of the collections that I worked on here in Switzerland, and this is another one. Here is just like a close-up on few vases that I also made here in Switzerland, which are called gradienti. And here we use color like more like two colors merged together in a fading, like, and creates this kind of shading and fading. And here what I also really like is to see how color behaves. I mean, well, in general, when you work with glass or in all of these projects, I go to the master with an idea which is quite fresh and quite, basic. It's just like, okay, I would like to work with this technique. The shape is normally quite simple, and because I really would like to focus more on the techniques and on the color rather than on complex shapes. So in these vases, for example, you really see like the focus is on the behavior of the colors, which changes depending on the temperature, on the atmosphere, on the little different amount that they pick with the pipe. So for me, it's always also a question of being really open to chance and being open to the different results. And that's also the fun part, I think, of working with glass, because it's a material that you cannot really predict. And yes, so that's about my work. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Laura. That was lovely. It was really nice to see where you're from and how it evolved. So everyone's story is very different and the work is very different. So I would like to hear more from you about the kind of context in which you think about your work. So I'm coming from the Design Miami world, So I have this tendency to label objects that have any relationship to function as design. I think I felt like, everything that's not sort of neatly categorized as fine art should just, band together, and we should all stick together in solidarity. So my work has been about, just talking about the storytelling value and the monetary value of design for over a decade. So I would like to ask you each, how do you think about your work in terms of these sort of labels? Like, do you think of it as art, design, craft, making? I mean, Laura, you're also an architect. So maybe Laura, I'll start with you. How do you categorize your kind of, particularly your glassmaking work?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I always question myself also in these regards. And I had a thought about it because I would label myself or my work as design, but not because of the function, not so much because of that, but more because of the approach, because maybe it's also something that comes from my studies, but like when I design a piece, I'm always also thinking about efficiency of like production efficiencies and sustainability. So when I design a vase, I also think, for example, the one with the 3 colors, they can produce 3 in one day, the glass blowers. After, they cannot pick with the pipe anymore in the pot because they are so long that they cannot go deep enough with the pipe. But then they could do a couple of gradienti. And after doing a couple of gradienti, the fading ones, which are a bit shorter, they could use the bottom of the pot to do ariosi, which is another collection I didn't show you, which is the glass basically has some bubbles. And this we do like by adding some soda. So I always also think about the kind of the cycle of production and the way to really use kind of the glass pot from full to the end in an efficient way to produce the pieces. So there is always also like this kind of approach, which is I think a design approach. Like it's not I want to create an art piece and want to have a message and I do whatever it takes. Yes. So this
no, that way of thinking does seem sort of classically design thinking, I guess. How about you, Darren?
Would say I see myself more as a craftsman. So for me, it's more about the material and understanding the material. But however, I do believe that it's all intertwined. So I do think about design. I do think about shape. But for me, again, it's understanding the material first, and then developing my idea from there. So it's a gradual process, but I definitely believe it's all intertwined. So for example, I necessarily wouldn't say my pieces are functional. It's more of like a centerpiece, something to see. You go into a big room and you see, and it kind of makes an impact, and it makes you question, what is that material? So in that sense, I would say more of a craftsman rather than a designer, but I do feel like it's intertwined.
But do you feel at all the pressure to be labeled as an artist per se, since we still sort of culturally put more value on art versus the other kind of art forms?
Do I feel pressured? I think the key is just to not think about that pressure and really just stay true to the material, which is the main thing. I would say, as I said, I would say I'm all three. But it's just the problem is people like to put you in a box, right? And that's part of the issue. And so I like to kind of get outside of the box. So it's a difficult question to ask, but I don't feel the pressure. I just do what I think is right, which always goes back to honoring the wood. And so that's my foundation.
Yeah, no, that's great. How about you, Diego?
Yeah, actually, I'm quite in tune with Darren. Like, I don't really want to have a certain label because I consider myself as neither of these, because I'm working in a certain way that would be very hard for me to say, oh, I am more of a designer because of this, or I am more of an artist because of that. If people want to put label on me or like on what they see, I encourage it, but I don't want to put that much of pressure of me being categorized.
Yeah. Well, one dichotomy that's kind of common to this art versus design or art versus design and craft is a sort of focus on storytelling versus or sort of having this like conceptual idea versus working with a material or having a very practical end. So maybe I'll ask you all now, how do you sort of think about the balance you have in your work between the narrative side of it versus the like working with a material to see what it can do? Diego, how are you? Because I mean, you're using a very unusual material in a very unique way.
Yeah. I mean, the storytelling and the materials are quite related in a way, or I mean, they're a reflection of me or a reflection of my history. So like the material is a certain way for me to express myself within this border or this concept that I work around. So it brings a lot of playfulness within that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. How about you, Darren?
I would say I find a compromise between both, because I feel like you need both to work hand in hand to have an interesting piece. So the story is important. Everyone loves a story. Everyone remembers a story. But then design is important as well, visually for the eyes. So I feel like when both work effectively, that's when you are, I guess, successful, if you want to call it that. But yeah, it needs to be 50-50 in my opinion. Because the story is impactful, but the piece, you remember it because of your eyes. So I think they both work on different senses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And Laura, what about you?
Yeah, I was thinking if I start more to think from the narrative point of view or the kind of the technical point of view, and I cannot answer, but I also think there are really two components. And maybe, yes, the narrative, it is a bit more of an inspiration for me, like the kind of the storytelling. Yeah, but then anyways, to kind of express the story, you need like the other component. So
It sort of plays into, I guess, how much are you thinking about the end user or the viewer in the end and what they're going to think versus how much you're kind of have a vision in your own head and you're doing it more for yourself. I mean, Darren in particular talked about the sort of therapeutic value he gets from just the process of making himself, no matter what someone else takes away from it. So Laura, how are you thinking about the sort of perception once it like leaves your hand?
I agree. I think I also do the objects for myself, actually.
Yeah.
And then of course, I'm happy if people like them, but not that I don't care, but like that's not the main thing. So it is kind of just a way to express, and everyone uses a material. I mean, some people just write, and everyone finds his medium, but it's it's a kind of a subjective.
Personal, yeah. I mean, Darren, I'm getting from you that you're very personally driven, but are you also thinking about the kind of end perception that may be out there in the world?
I definitely think about both. However, I'm definitely aware that the journey is important. And so, for example, on my Instagram, I post the process. So it's not just the finished piece, but it's about the journey. I think sometimes we focus too much on the end goal, but the journey is more important. And so as a maker as well, or as a craftsman, or whatever you want to call me, or artist, I feel like it's important that we educate others that don't know anything about a craft. And so I think that's why it's so important to focus on the journey rather than simply the end goal, if that makes sense.
And Diego, your work seems to have so much story just in the titles themselves. So everyone knows that, things were made in 25 minutes, for instance. How about you?
What do you mean?
How much are you sort of thinking about the end perception or the end user of your work versus just fulfilling a sort of inner vision for what you want to make?
Yeah, I mostly do it because I have fun doing it. Like if I had no fun, I would never do what I do because it's a bit nerve-wracking and I put a lot of myself into what I do. So I mostly do it for myself, but also it's something that I discovered, like as I started presenting my work, is that people respond to it and it makes them happy. So from that, I also found something else within that by doing something that I enjoy, some other people can enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Can you think of or share what is the best compliment you ever got for your work that made you feel the best?
I think it's just a bit of a general thing of people coming to me and saying, "Oh, seeing all that makes me very happy."
Yeah.
And that's the best compliment that you can ever receive.
It's true. Darren, how about you? Is there anything more specific that someone's ever like they really got it or something for you?
I think for me, it's just a reaction. Like I have people that come and see my work and love it. And then I have people that don't understand it. But I'm happy that they don't understand it because then they question. I don't really, when I see people that have no reaction at all, I'm a bit more worried by that. A good reaction, a bad reaction is a reaction and it's made some sort of impact.
Yeah.
So if I can kind of move you to even react, regardless of the emotion, I'm very happy. And if they want to ask questions, if they're curious, then that's what makes me smile. Because I think kids have that about them. Little kids, they always question what's this, what's that. But as we get older, we don't question, we just accept things for what it is. And so if I'm able to kind of emotionally pull an adult to kind of think in a certain way or to question what is this, then I'm happy even if it's a bad reaction or a good reaction.
Yeah. All right, Laura, how about you? Have you gotten an amazing compliment that's just stuck with you?
No, it doesn't come to my mind, but I also agree with Darren that, you know, it's always nice when people ask you more about your work and they really want to learn how it has been made and yes, and the process. So it's true. I mean, at the end, it's just that you see this curiosity, this interest is it's what makes you happy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, to the audience out there, please ask more questions. Everybody wants to talk about their work. So I'll take this opportunity just to say thank you so much, Darren, Diego, and Laura. It's been a pleasure. And all three, their work can be found on the Design Miami website for sale, and everyone should go buy some in the DMBX shop. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed it.